It started on a quiet night, the kind of night where the stars seemed ordinary and no one expected history to change. In an observatory on a lonely mountain, a young scientist named Dr. Lena Moritz was drinking cold coffee, half asleep in front of the monitor. The radio telescope had been scanning deep space for months as part of an international program that looked for unusual radio signals. Normally, the screens only showed random waves, meaningless patterns of cosmic noise. But that night, something new appeared. A soft, repeating pulse like a heartbeat coming from far away. At first, Lena thought it was a system error. She checked the instruments twice, then 3 times. The pulse kept returning at perfect intervals. She leaned closer to the screen, her heart thudding faster. The pattern wasn't random. It had rhythm, structure, almost like someone was trying to speak. She quickly called her senior, Dr. Raphael Singh, who arrived still half in his coat. When he saw the data, he froze. Together, they recorded the signal, cleaned it of background noise, and ran it through translation algorithms. What came out made both of them go silent. The pattern wasn't just organized, and it was language. A strange coded voice repeating something that, once translated through mathematical comparison, sounded like, "Help us. We are dying." By dawn, news had spread across observatories around the world. Stations in Chile, Japan, and South Africa confirmed they were receiving the same signal. It wasn't local interference. It wasn't a prank. It was coming from deep space, about 34 light-years away, from a system no one had ever thought could host life. Within hours, emergency meetings were held at NASA, the European Space Agency, and even the United Nations. The discovery wasn't just scientific. It was emotional. For the first time in human history, it seemed that someone, or something, out there was calling for help. Television channels interrupted regular broadcasts. The words, "We are not alone," flashed across screens in every language. People everywhere reacted differently. Some cheered and cried in awe. Some prayed. Others feared it was a trap or an invasion. Conspiracy theories exploded online. Was it aliens trying to trick Earth into revealing itself? Was it an old signal from a lost civilization? Or was it truly, heartbreakingly, a desperate cry from a world on the edge of extinction? In the middle of this chaos, a group of linguists and physicists gathered in Geneva to study the signal more deeply. They spent days decoding, mapping, and verifying the message. Each small breakthrough revealed more sadness in the words. The aliens' transmission, though incomplete, spoke of collapsing cities, poisoned air, and oceans turning to dust. The voice seemed weak, fading, as if even the technology sending it was dying. It wasn't just a message of contact, it was a plea for rescue. Governments across the world tried to keep things quiet, but that was impossible. Too many people had heard the recordings, seen the data. The internet was full of analysis, amateur translations, and passionate arguments. Was humanity capable of helping? Could we even reach them? Scientists said that even a reply would take years to arrive. Still, something about the tone of the alien voice, a soft, trembling sequence of notes and hums, made people feel pity, not fear. In one of those meetings, a senior astronomer stood up and said, "Maybe they chose us because they knew we could understand suffering." His words went viral. Suddenly, the idea that aliens could be looking to humans for help changed how the world saw itself. People began to imagine that maybe humanity, despite its wars and flaws, could become something more as a savior in the universe, not a destroyer. Meanwhile, Lena Moritz, the woman who first caught the signal, couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the sound late at night, alone in the lab. Every time she listened, she felt as if she could hear pain. Not mechanical data, but emotion. She wondered who they were, what they looked like, how long they had been sending the message. She wrote in her journal, "Someone out there is dying while waiting for us to listen." Those words would later appear on banners and murals around the world. As the weeks passed, the signal grew weaker. The alien system, scientists said, might be collapsing or burning out. It added urgency to everything. Debates started in parliaments, universities, and living rooms. Should humanity respond? Some warned that answering could be dangerous. Others argued that ignoring it would be unforgivable. Religious leaders claimed it was a divine test. Military officials worried it could be a trap. But ordinary people, teachers, doctors, engineers, sent letters to governments pleading, "At least say something back." For the first time in decades, humanity was united in awe. Across all borders, languages, and beliefs, everyone shared one thought. Someone needed help, and only we could decide what to do. Space agencies scrambled to prepare a formal reply. The problem wasn't just technology. It was responsibility. What should humans say? How do you speak to another species for the first time in history, especially one that might be dying? On a rainy morning in Washington, a global team gathered to record the first human response. It was simple, honest, and carefully chosen. "We hear you. We are listening." Those words were encoded and sent back toward the same coordinates. It would take years to arrive and years more to receive a reply, but still, it was something. For the scientists who had spent their lives staring at silent stars, it was a beginning. After that, everything changed. Funding for space programs surged. People began studying astronomy like never before. Even in poor countries, children pointed at the night sky, dreaming not of monsters but of neighbors. For the first time, the human race wasn't just wondering if someone was out there. It was answering a call. But beneath the excitement, there was a strange sadness too. Some experts whispered that maybe the aliens wouldn't survive long enough to hear our reply. Maybe by the time our signal reached them, their world would already be gone. That thought haunted everyone who worked on the project. Still, the message had done something remarkable. It had reminded Earth of its own humanity. Wars paused, if only briefly. Nations that had once been enemies shared data freely. The fear of the unknown had turned into compassion for the unseen. Lena stood again in the observatory weeks later, watching the stars through the cold glass. The mountains around her were silent, the night calm, but she felt connected to something vast. Somewhere out there, across billions of kilometers, a civilization was struggling to survive, and somehow they had found a way to reach across the impossible distance to ask for help. That courage, she thought, was beautiful. In that moment, the stars no longer looked distant. They looked alive. Every tiny light seemed like a possibility, a story, a voice waiting to be heard. Humanity didn't yet know it, but that night marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just in science, but in the human heart. Because once you hear a cry for help, even from across the universe, you can never go back to silence again. The news of the alien signal spread across the world like wildfire. At first, people were fascinated, staring at the stars in awe, but soon the excitement was replaced by heated debates. Governments, scientists, and citizens argued day and night over what should be done. Some said humanity should respond immediately, that ignoring a plea for help from another species was morally wrong. Others warned that answering could be extremely dangerous. After all, humans had no idea who these aliens were, what their intentions were, or what kind of technology they possessed. Could answering put Earth at risk? Was it possible that this was a trap, a way to lure humanity into a dangerous situation? The questions seemed endless, and yet the need to act felt urgent. In the halls of the United Nations, representatives from almost every country gathered to discuss the unprecedented situation. Debates raged for days. Some leaders argued that Earth needed to protect itself first, that humanity should not take any action that might endanger the planet. They cited history, pointing out how humans often acted impulsively with unknown civilizations, and warned that a similar mistake could have catastrophic consequences. Others, however, spoke with passion about compassion and responsibility. They argued that the universe was vast, and if a civilization had reached out across light years to ask for help, humans had a duty to respond. These voices reminded everyone that humanity had survived because of cooperation and empathy, and perhaps this was a chance to prove that those qualities extended beyond Earth. Meanwhile, scientists and experts began forming teams to study the situation more carefully. The scientists didn't just want to respond blindly. They wanted to understand as much as possible about the alien civilization before making any decision. They analyzed the signal endlessly, attempting to learn about the aliens' language, their technology, and their environment. The data showed that the aliens' world was far different from Earth, a planet with extreme conditions that humans could barely imagine. Yet the aliens had not only survived there, they had built a civilization advanced enough to send signals into the cosmos. This revelation fascinated humanity. If these creatures could survive and thrive in such a hostile environment, then surely humans could find a way to help them. The world's attention turned to a new group called the Deathworld Initiative. This was a coalition of scientists, astronauts, engineers, and military strategists formed to explore the possibility of a rescue mission. The nickname Deathworlders came from the alien messages themselves. In one transmission, the aliens referred to Earth as a death world, a place so harsh that only a species as adaptable as humans could survive here. The term stuck, and soon the team of volunteers preparing for the mission was affectionately called the Deathworlders. They were an unlikely group, a mix of ages, nationalities, and specialties. Some were young engineers who had never traveled beyond Earth's orbit. Others were experienced astronauts who had faced life-threatening missions in space. Yet all shared the same determination, to do what humanity had never done before, cross the void of space to save another civilization. As the debate continued on Earth, ordinary people became deeply involved too. Social media exploded with messages, petitions, and discussions. Millions of people wrote letters urging governments to act, to respond to the aliens' plea. Even children were drawn into the conversation, drawing pictures of what they imagined the aliens looked like, writing messages of hope, and dreaming of a universe where humans could be heroes. Public pressure forced governments to take the situation seriously. The world realized that this was not just a scientific or political issue, it was a moral one. Humanity was facing a choice that could define its character for generations. Among the Deathworld Initiative, tensions ran high. Meetings lasted late into the night with heated discussions about ethics, risks, and technology. Some members worried about the safety of humans traveling across such an unimaginable distance. Others argued that the alien suffering could not be ignored. Scientists like Dr. Lena Moritz, who had first detected the signal, insisted that humans could make a difference if they acted wisely. Engineers and pilots spent countless hours designing vehicles capable of surviving interstellar travel. They experimented with propulsion systems, life support, and communication technologies that had never been tested beyond Earth's orbit. The challenge was enormous and the pressure immense. Every decision carried weight not just for the mission, but for the reputation and survival of humanity itself. Meanwhile, philosophers, ethicists, and theologians around the world debated the implications. Some questioned whether humans had the right to intervene in another species' affairs. Others saw this as an opportunity to redefine humanity's place in the universe, to demonstrate moral courage on a cosmic scale. Articles, essays, and debates filled newspapers and online forums. The conversation became more than about science. It became a reflection on what it meant to be human. Was humanity compassionate enough to cross the vast distance of space for strangers it had never met? Could humans put aside fear and suspicion to act purely out of empathy? In the midst of all this, the alien signal continued to arrive intermittently, growing weaker with each passing week. The urgency became clearer. The aliens were dying and time was slipping away. The fading signal reminded humanity that indecision could mean the difference between life and death for an entire civilization. Every day without a response felt like a moral failure. Citizens, scientists, and leaders alike felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on their shoulders. The world's divisions became sharper, but the possibility of doing something extraordinary also united people in ways never seen before. To address the urgency, a coalition of countries agreed to a temporary joint task force. They pooled resources, combining satellites, probes, and communication arrays to study the alien world more closely. Military planners contributed knowledge of logistics, engineers devised methods of interstellar communication, and scientists focused on understanding the alien language and biology. The task force's mission was simple but enormous: figure out how humanity could respond, and decide whether it was possible to send help across light years. During this time, ordinary citizens also found ways to participate. Amateur astronomers joined in, tracking the signals from their backyards. School children wrote letters and sent messages of encouragement that were archived by the task force. Artists and musicians created works inspired by the alien cry for help. The human response became a collective effort, a global movement of curiosity, courage, and empathy. People realized that humanity was no longer isolated on Earth. Somehow, far away in the darkness of space, another civilization was depending on us, waiting for a choice that only humans could make. The debates on Earth, the planning of the Deathworld Initiative, and the work of countless volunteers all culminated in a single realization: humanity could no longer remain passive. The ethical, scientific, and emotional pressure was too great. The signal had changed humanity's understanding of its own responsibility in the universe. The choice became clear. To act would be risky, but not to act would be unforgivable. Every person on Earth, from the busiest city to the quietest village, understood that the aliens had reached across unimaginable distances asking for help, and it was now humanity's turn to respond. By the end of this phase, the stage was set for a historic journey. Humans were no longer merely explorers. They were about to become rescuers. The moral debate, the scientific challenges, and the emotional weight had prepared humanity for a mission unlike any other in history. The aliens had begged for rescue, and the Deathworlders were ready to answer the call. Across the planet, in cities, towns, and rural communities, people looked up at the stars with a mixture of hope, fear, and determination. Humanity had a choice, and this time, the entire species would act together. The world had entered a new era. No one knew exactly what lay ahead, or whether the mission would succeed. But one truth was undeniable. Humans had the opportunity to prove something about themselves that no one had ever seen before. They could cross light years, face unknown dangers, and potentially save a civilization on the brink of extinction. The debates, fears, and arguments that had once divided humanity now became the foundation for courage, determination, and cooperation. And so, as scientists, leaders, and ordinary people prepared for what would come next, the universe waited, holding its breath. The Deathworlders were ready to take the first step into the unknown, guided by curiosity, empathy, and a shared determination to answer the plea for help that had echoed across the stars. Humanity was no longer just looking up at the sky. Humanity was listening, deciding, and preparing to act. The first chapter of a story that would change the universe had begun, all because a faint, trembling signal had reached Earth on a quiet night, asking for help. That night, every human being who had heard it felt a little closer to the stars, and a little closer to the idea that courage and compassion could travel even across light years. After months of careful planning, debates, and preparation, humanity took its first real steps toward answering the alien plea for help. The task was unprecedented. Send a message and eventually humans across vast, uncharted distances to reach a civilization in crisis. The first step was simple but monumental, a probe carrying humanity's reply. Engineers worked tirelessly to design it. It wasn't just a simple spacecraft. It was a vessel carrying the hopes, fears, and moral responsibility of an entire species. On board were carefully encoded messages, images of Earth, and instructions for what humans could do to help. The launch itself became a global event. News channels broadcasted live from every spaceport, while citizens across the world watched in awe as the rocket soared into the sky, breaking through clouds into the endless black of space. People cheered, cried, and held their breath, realizing that humanity was finally reaching out into the universe, not for conquest, not for science alone, but to save another life. Meanwhile, a team of the best pilots, astronauts, engineers, and medical experts trained for the first manned mission to the alien system. They were called the Deathworlders, a name derived from the alien term for Earth. The nickname reminded them constantly of what they represented: humans who had survived on a planet of extremes, now tasked with reaching out to a civilization in distress. Each member of the crew brought unique skills. Pilots trained to navigate ships faster than anything previously conceived. Engineers studied alien physics and hypothetical technologies derived from signal data. Doctors and biologists prepared for unknown diseases, alien physiology, and environmental hazards. The team endured months of simulations, zero-gravity training, and psychological conditioning. They practiced every conceivable scenario, from navigation failures to hostile encounters, knowing that failure could cost not only their lives, but also the lives of those they were trying to save. As the day approached for humanity's first crewed launch, tension was high. People on Earth watched nervously as the crew prepared for departure. The spacecraft, named the Solace, was a marvel of human engineering. It was designed not just to travel vast distances, but to maintain life for months, possibly years, in deep space. Every module was tested for redundancy, every system double-checked. Communication technology was integrated with the alien signals patterns to allow faster and clearer communication once they arrived. Even the crew's meals were designed for long-term storage and nutrition. ensuring survival in conditions far harsher than any they had ever experienced. When the Solace finally lifted off, the world erupted in celebration. Fireworks weren't needed. Humanity's hopes and dreams were written in the flames of the rocket as it pierced the sky. People everywhere felt a mixture of pride, fear, and hope. No mission had ever carried the collective moral responsibility of an entire species before. Families gathered in living rooms, offices shut down, and schools paused classes to follow the launch. Even skeptics couldn't deny the gravity of the moment. Humanity was no longer earthbound. They were venturing into the unknown to answer a call for help from a world far away. During the journey, the crew faced unimaginable challenges. Space itself is hostile and unforgiving, and even a small error could have catastrophic consequences. The Solace experienced turbulence as it passed through asteroid belts and gravitational anomalies. The crew spent long hours monitoring systems, repairing minor failures, and navigating using calculations that balanced human knowledge with data derived from the alien signal. Sleep was short, and every day brought a new trial, whether mechanical, psychological, or emotional. They relied on each other not only for expertise but for moral support. Loneliness stretched across millions of miles, yet shared purpose created an unbreakable bond among the team. As they traveled, the crew studied the alien signals in more detail. They tried to reconstruct the alien environment, mapping atmospheric conditions, possible threats, and the locations of surviving structures. Every discovery was shared with scientists back on Earth in real time, though the delays were immense, measured in hours or even days. They realized the aliens' planet was in ecological collapse, with evidence of earthquakes, extreme storms, and chemical changes in water sources. The more they learned, the more urgent their mission became. Humanity had committed itself to a rescue that might very well be a race against time. The crew also prepared for first contact. They studied patterns of alien communication, body language inferred from signals, and behavioral responses to stress. Even small gestures could mean the difference between trust and panic. Dr. Lena Moritz, who had first detected the alien signal, consulted remotely with the team, advising them on nuances in the transmissions. Her insights helped the crew understand the aliens not just as data points or a problem to solve, but as a living, thinking civilization in desperate need of aid. The humanity of the mission became ever clearer. This was not about fame or discovery. It was about saving lives. The mental strain on the crew was immense. Isolation, the weight of responsibility, and the fear of failure pressed on them constantly. They relied on routines, exercises, and shared stories from Earth to maintain morale. Every minor success, repairing a module, navigating a tricky gravitational field, was celebrated quietly but meaningfully. They reminded themselves of the voices waiting millions of kilometers away, the lives depending on their skills and courage. They weren't just traveling through space. They were traveling with hope, carrying the trust of an entire species across the void. Back on Earth, anticipation grew. Scientists and politicians anxiously watched every signal sent from the Solace. People followed updates from schools, homes, and offices. Humanity collectively felt the tension and hope that the crew felt personally. News outlets described the mission in real time, often blending technical updates with human stories. Letters sent by children, social media posts from ordinary citizens, and the personal accounts of family members watching the launch. The mission became more than science. It became a symbol of what humanity could achieve when united by purpose. After months in transit, the Solace finally approached the alien system. The first glimpse of the distant planet brought awe and fear to the crew. From the screens, the planet looked beautiful and fragile, oceans glimmering faintly, clouds swirling in violent storms. Yet there were unmistakable signs of devastation. Large regions of the surface seemed scarred or lifeless, areas of storm and fire, and indications that the environment was extremely unstable. The alien civilization's structures, when visible, seemed delicate, almost ethereal, and barely holding against the chaos around them. The crew understood immediately that they were entering a world in crisis. As they prepared to descend into the planet's atmosphere, the crew realized that they were on the edge of history. Every decision now mattered more than ever. One wrong move could destroy the fragile remnants of the alien civilization or endanger human lives. They carefully planned their approach, balancing speed, safety, and communication. They used what they had learned from the signals to identify areas most likely to harbor surviving alien life. Their mission was precise yet delicate. find the survivors, provide immediate aid, and prepare for a larger rescue operation if necessary. In those final moments before entering orbit, the crew felt the weight of humanity's expectations pressing on their shoulders. They were the first humans to travel this far, not as explorers seeking knowledge alone, but as rescuers, carrying the hopes of millions across unimaginable distances. Each crew member silently reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from the first signal caught by Dr. Moritz to the debates, planning, and training that had prepared them for this moment. They understood that their actions could define not only the fate of the alien species, but also the moral legacy of humanity itself. As the Solace entered the alien system, scanning for life and signs of survivors, the crew knew they were witnessing history. They were about to step into a world unlike any Earth had ever seen, a world on the brink of extinction, and a civilization calling out for help across the stars. Their journey had been long, dangerous, and emotionally exhausting, but the mission was clear. Humanity had answered the call. They were no longer observers in the universe. They were active participants in the survival of life beyond Earth. The next steps would be critical. As the team prepared to make contact and begin the first interstellar rescue mission in history, guided by courage, knowledge, and a shared determination to save lives. In the silence of space between stars and planets, the crew of the Solace understood something profound. The universe was vast, indifferent, and often cruel, but here, in this moment, humanity had chosen compassion over fear. The aliens had reached out and humans had responded. That choice, more than any technology or calculation, defined the journey. As the Solace prepared to enter orbit and make first contact, the crew held their breath, ready to meet the unknown and begin the work that would forever change the course of life in the universe. The first sight of the alien world left the crew of the Solace both awestruck and horrified. From orbit, they could see the planet's beauty intertwined with devastation. Swirling clouds of green and gray stretched across the sky, while patches of scorched land marked the areas most affected by catastrophic events. Massive storms raged over continents, and once proud cities now lay in ruins. The planet had been alive, vibrant, and thriving, but now it was gasping, its civilization teetering on the edge of collapse. The crew realized immediately that this was no ordinary rescue mission. They were entering a world in full crisis, and the lives of an entire species depended on their actions. As they descended closer, the crew used advanced scanners to locate signs of life. The aliens themselves were unlike anything humans had seen or imagined. They were luminous, delicate beings, almost transparent in appearance, with bodies that glowed softly in the dim light of their dying sun. They moved with careful, deliberate motions, clearly fragile compared to the humans. Yet, despite their physical vulnerability, there was an undeniable intelligence in their eyes, a depth of emotion that humans could instinctively understand. These beings had endured centuries of survival in a harsh, unrelenting environment, and now they were struggling against forces beyond their control. The first attempts at contact were cautious. The aliens were terrified at the sight of humans who looked enormous, strong, and unfamiliar. Some retreated into the remnants of their shelters, while others watched curiously from a distance, their glowing bodies flickering in the shadows. The crew of the Solace understood that trust could not be rushed. They began by transmitting calm, non-threatening messages, using patterns derived from the original signals. Slowly, they showed that they came in peace, that they were here to help, not to harm. As contact grew more stable, the crew began assessing the situation on the ground. The planet's environment was far harsher than Earth in any extreme condition humans had faced. Toxic air pockets, collapsing buildings, and erratic weather made every step dangerous. But the crew pressed on, moving carefully with protective suits and specialized equipment. Their first priority was locating aliens who had survived the initial disasters. Many had taken refuge underground in caverns and tunnels, where conditions were slightly more stable. These areas were difficult to access, but they were the safest hope for the remaining population. When humans and aliens finally met face to face, there was a mixture of fear, awe, and relief. The aliens had never seen beings as large and resilient as humans, yet they instinctively recognized that these visitors were here to help. The crew carefully carried supplies, portable shelters, air purifiers, medical kits, and began establishing temporary stations. They worked side by side with the aliens, who were quick to learn human techniques despite their weakened state. For the first time, humans and aliens collaborated directly, bridging gaps of species, language, and experience. It was not easy. Misunderstandings arose, some creatures panicked, and small accidents occurred. But with patience and empathy, the crew slowly gained the aliens' trust. The work was exhausting and dangerous. Storms could strike without warning, and toxic gases in some regions forced the team to retreat repeatedly. Yet the humans never wavered. Every life saved, every alien guided to a safe zone, strengthened their resolve. They realized that survival was not simply about moving beings to safety. It was about teaching them how to survive in a changing environment, how to rebuild what had been lost, and how to trust that help had come from beyond the stars. The crew had to adapt constantly, learning from the aliens, observing their instincts, and modifying human techniques to suit their unique physiology. Amid the struggle, moments of wonder and connection appeared. The aliens had knowledge of their planet that humans could never have imagined. They knew where water sources still existed, how to navigate underground channels safely, and which areas were structurally sound. In return, humans shared technology that helped monitor environmental hazards, purify air and water, and stabilize fragile structures. Together, they began a small-scale restoration. The aliens, fragile though they were, displayed resilience and courage, inspiring the human crew with their determination to survive. Communication remained a constant challenge. Even with the initial decoding, the aliens' language was complex, expressing emotions and concepts through light patterns, vibrations, and subtle changes in color. It required constant observation and improvisation. Crew members took shifts learning to interpret gestures and signals, slowly building a bridge of understanding. Through this process, humans discovered that the aliens were not only intelligent but deeply empathetic, capable of feelings and cooperation far beyond simple survival instincts. They expressed gratitude in ways that humans could feel intuitively, through gestures, shared work, and protective behaviors toward the crew. Time moved differently on the alien planet. Days and nights passed, but the mission had no schedule. Every hour brought new crises. A sudden storm threatened a colony, a cave-in trapped some survivors, and supplies occasionally ran low. The crew worked tirelessly, often sacrificing sleep and comfort to ensure that every alien they could reach was safe. The bonds formed between human and alien were strong. Despite the language barriers, trust and empathy became universal. The aliens began to mimic human efforts, showing initiative and learning quickly from observation. They were not passive recipients of aid. They were active participants in their own survival. As the weeks passed, the crew realized that the alien species had not only survived centuries of environmental challenges, but had developed sophisticated social structures and problem-solving skills. Yet these abilities were not enough to counter the current planetary disaster. The humans' technology and knowledge were essential to stabilize the environment, provide clean air, and establish temporary shelters. The combined efforts created small safe zones, places where aliens could live, rest, and recover. Slowly, the mood among the survivors shifted from fear to cautious hope. For the first time, the aliens began to believe that rescue was possible. The crew also observed the psychological effects of their work. Many aliens had lost family members and friends in the disasters. Humans had to provide not only physical aid but emotional support. Simple acts, handing out food, offering shelter, showing care, had profound impacts. The crew learned that empathy was as crucial as technology. They listened to the aliens' stories, offered comfort, and celebrated small victories. A single safe night, a newly stabilized shelter, or a rescued individual became moments of joy and hope. It was these moments that reminded the crew why they had come so far. Despite the success, the work remained perilous. Environmental hazards, fragile structures, and the aliens' delicate physiology made every task challenging. Crew members had to innovate constantly, creating new tools and adapting existing technology. Drones were deployed to map unstable areas, portable filtration units were developed to clean toxic air, and makeshift bridges and ladders allowed safe movement across dangerous terrain. Every human effort was amplified by the aliens' cooperation, creating a synergy that neither species could achieve alone. The human crew also learned humility and respect. They realized that their knowledge was valuable, but so was the alien understanding of their world. They had to observe, learn, and integrate alien strategies with human technology. This collaboration led to surprising solutions. A naturally occurring plant neutralized toxic gases. Underground channels acted as safe passageways during storms, and alien structures provided shelter that humans could not replicate. Together, they began stabilizing pockets of civilization, giving the aliens a fighting chance for survival. By the end of this phase, the crew had established a working system of rescue and stabilization. Survivors were fed, sheltered, and monitored. Small safe zones acted as hubs for further rescue and rebuilding efforts. The aliens, once fearful and weak, began to show initiative and hope. Humanity's presence had transformed despair into determination. The crew realized that the mission's success depended not on conquering space or displaying power, but on trust, collaboration, and shared resilience. The Deathworlders had become more than rescuers. They had become partners, teachers, and friends. The aliens' initial fear had turned into awe, then curiosity, and finally into trust. The humans' actions proved that survival in the universe depended not only on strength or technology, but on compassion and cooperation. As the crew continued to work tirelessly, they understood that this was only the beginning. They had stabilized a civilization on the brink of extinction, but the long-term goal remained: ensure the survival of the species, rebuild their society, and create a foundation for a shared future between humans and aliens. Through it all, the crew's determination never wavered. Each day brought new challenges, but also new successes. Every rescued alien, every stabilized shelter, and every functioning system was a victory. Slowly, the aliens began to understand the humans' intentions. They learned that these massive, resilient beings from a distant death world had come not to conquer but to save. In their fragile, glowing way, the aliens began to trust humanity completely. In those moments of connection, humans learned something profound about themselves. They realized that courage, empathy, and cooperation could reach across unimaginable distances, even across species. By acting selflessly, they had proven that humanity's strength was not just physical or technological, it was moral. And in the silence of the alien world, amidst storms, ruins, and despair, a bond was formed that would endure far longer than the immediate mission. Life had been saved, hope had been restored, and a new chapter had begun in the story of the universe. The Deathworlders looked out at the alien world, battered but alive, and knew that their work had only just begun. But for the first time, the aliens smiled, or at least a gesture that humans instinctively recognized as joy. Together, they had taken the first step toward survival, toward rebuilding, and toward a future where species from two worlds could work together. In that moment, the crew understood that humanity had done something extraordinary. They had answered the call, and they had proven that even in the harshest corners of existence, life could find allies and hope across the stars. Months had passed since the Deathworlders had first set foot on the alien planet, and slowly but surely their efforts began to transform the desperate situation into one of hope. The once bleak landscape now showed signs of life returning, small pockets of stability emerging amidst the chaos. The aliens, initially weak and terrified, had started to regain strength. They were learning, adapting, and most importantly, trusting the humans who had come across the stars to save them. The temporary shelters and safe zones built by the crew had become centers of recovery, where humans and aliens worked together, side by side, sharing skills, knowledge, and hope. Every day the bond between the two species grew stronger, and the alien world, though still fragile, became a place where survival was possible. The aliens themselves began to exhibit a remarkable resilience. Having endured centuries of harsh conditions, they adapted quickly to the presence of humans and the new technologies introduced to them. They learned to operate equipment designed to purify air and water, stabilize structures, and monitor environmental dangers. They began organizing themselves, forming teams to assist with reconstruction, rescue operations, and care for the sick and injured. Their fragile, luminous bodies moved with renewed purpose, their fear gradually replaced with cautious optimism. The aliens' intelligence, once hidden behind layers of desperation, now shone through, revealing a civilization capable of collaboration, problem-solving, and leadership. Meanwhile, the humans continued to innovate. The challenges of the alien environment demanded creative solutions. Engineers and scientists developed portable energy sources to power shelters, drones to deliver supplies across unstable terrain, and communication networks that allowed humans and aliens to coordinate complex operations over long distances. Medical teams adapted human techniques to suit the alien physiology, discovering new ways to treat injuries and disease that had previously been fatal. Every innovation brought progress, but more importantly, it built trust. The aliens began to see humans not just as rescuers but as partners, allies, and even friends. The psychological transformation was equally profound. Initially, the aliens had been hesitant, wary, and fearful, uncertain whether the massive, unfamiliar beings that had appeared in their skies were friend or foe. But human kindness, patience, and courage gradually bridged the gap. Small gestures, helping an injured alien carrying supplies or simply showing patience during moments of confusion, were recognized and appreciated. The aliens began to respond with gestures of their own, displaying gratitude, cooperation, and curiosity. Communication, though still challenging, became richer and more nuanced. Light patterns, vibrations, and movements conveyed meaning, emotion, and even humor. A sense of community began to emerge, uniting two species who had once been separated by light years and unimaginable differences. As the rescue operations continued, the human crew realized that their mission had grown beyond simple survival assistance. They were now laying the foundation for a sustainable future. Plans were made for larger shelters, safer living zones, and long-term support systems. The aliens were taught to harness limited natural resources more effectively, and humans shared strategies for mitigating environmental hazards. Together they worked on small-scale ecological restoration, stabilizing water sources, reinforcing structures, and creating protective measures against storms. The aliens' knowledge of their own planet proved invaluable, complementing human technology in ways that allowed both species to achieve results neither could have managed alone. The bond between humans and aliens reached its most remarkable expression when they began to collaborate on reconstruction. Formerly devastated cities were slowly rebuilt as functional centers for the remaining population. Workshops, medical stations, and communication hubs sprang up, run jointly by humans and aliens. The human crew often marveled at the ingenuity of the alien species, their ability to adapt and improvise in ways the humans had never considered. And in turn, the aliens learned from human problem-solving, engineering techniques, and organizational skills. Together, they formed a partnership that transcended language, culture, and biology, a true alliance forged in adversity. Time brought further surprises. As the aliens regained confidence, they began to venture out of the safe zones, exploring previously abandoned regions of their world. The humans accompanied them, monitoring the environment and providing protection where necessary. These excursions were critical, both for gathering resources and for helping the aliens reclaim their sense of agency. They began to understand that survival was not just about physical protection. It was about restoring autonomy, control, and dignity. The presence of humans, far from diminishing the aliens' capabilities, encouraged them to take risks, innovate, and reclaim their planet. Together, they began to imagine a future where their civilization could thrive once more. Meanwhile, back on Earth, news of the mission spread, inspiring awe and admiration. People followed the progress through reports, videos, and messages sent by the crew. The story of humans crossing the vast expanse of space to save another species captured imaginations, sparking hope and pride. Scientists, students, and ordinary citizens marveled at the courage, ingenuity, and empathy demonstrated by the Deathworlders. The mission became a symbol of what humanity could achieve when united by purpose and compassion, a reminder that even in a universe often indifferent or hostile, life could choose kindness. As months turned into a year, the aliens began to fully recognize the humans' role in their survival. They called humans the ones who answered, a title of respect, gratitude, and awe. In their luminous, subtle way, the aliens expressed deep appreciation for the perseverance, ingenuity, and compassion that had carried them through their darkest days. Ceremonies and gatherings were held in which aliens celebrated their survival and the humans' presence, blending cultural traditions with new forms of interaction inspired by human practices. It was a profound moment. Two species, separated by vast distances and entirely different worlds, now shared a bond of trust, respect, and mutual reliance. The crew also recognized the importance of leaving a legacy. They began to document every aspect of their work, creating detailed guides on survival, technology adaptation, and cooperation between species. This knowledge would ensure that even after the humans eventually left, the aliens could continue to rebuild, adapt, and thrive. It was not enough to save lives in the moment. The mission required ensuring long-term survival and growth. The Deathworlders wanted to empower the aliens, giving them the tools and understanding to continue independently, while knowing that humanity would always remain a supportive ally across the stars. As the mission progressed, the aliens themselves started contributing new knowledge. They shared insights into sustainable practices, natural resource management, and environmental repair techniques that humans had never encountered. Combining human technology with alien ingenuity created remarkable solutions. Water filtration systems powered by natural chemical reactions, shelters designed to withstand extreme weather using minimal materials, and communication networks that could operate in harsh atmospheric conditions. The partnership had matured into a fully collaborative effort, blending the strengths of both species to achieve what neither could do alone. The emotional impact on the humans was profound. Many had expected their work to be purely technical, rescue, stabilization, and eventual departure. But what they found was a deep, lasting connection. They witnessed resilience, gratitude, and curiosity in beings completely unlike themselves. They shared stories, humor, and small daily rituals, bridging the vast gap of biology and culture with simple acts of kindness and cooperation. Every day, the humans learned more about the alien perspective, their history, and the struggles that had brought them to the brink. In return, the aliens learned about humans, their determination, creativity, and empathy. Finally, after years of effort, a turning point arrived. The alien civilization, once on the verge of extinction, began to thrive again. Safe zones expanded into fully functional settlements. Communities formed, guided by a new understanding of survival, technology, and cooperation. Children were born, signaling a true rebirth. The aliens had regained their independence, and humanity's intervention had become a story of partnership, not dominance. The Deathworlders had fulfilled their mission, not merely by saving lives, but by restoring hope, dignity, and the capacity to thrive. As the human crew prepared to return to Earth, there was a mixture of pride, sadness, and fulfillment. Leaving the planet was difficult. Bonds had been formed that transcended language, species, and distance, but they knew that the aliens were no longer helpless. They had been empowered, educated, and equipped to continue surviving on their own. The humans had taught them, guided them, and shared the weight of responsibility, but ultimately the aliens had reclaimed their world. The mission was a success, not only in terms of survival, but in establishing a new precedent for interstellar cooperation and empathy. When the Solace returned to Earth, it was greeted with celebrations unlike any in history. Humanity had witnessed not only a technological marvel, the first manned interstellar mission, but also a moral triumph. People everywhere felt a sense of pride and wonder, inspired by what humans could achieve when united by purpose, courage, and compassion. The story of the rescue became a symbol, a lesson that even in the vast, indifferent universe, acts of kindness, bravery, and collaboration could echo across light years. The legacy of the mission endured long after the immediate rescue. The aliens continued to thrive, maintaining communication with humans and sharing knowledge across the stars. Humanity learned that compassion could reach far beyond Earth, that courage and empathy could cross unimaginable distances, and that even in the harshest conditions, life could survive when others were willing to help. The experience redefined what it meant to be human, not merely a survivor on a harsh planet, but a species capable of choosing morality, kindness, and courage in a universe full of uncertainty. In the end, the aliens' world, once on the brink of destruction, became a testament to the power of partnership and determination. Humans had answered a cry for help across the stars, proving that even in the darkest moments, life could choose hope. The Deathworlders had not only saved a civilization, they had forged a bond that would last generations, a reminder that in a universe filled with silence, humanity could be a voice of rescue, trust, and compassion. The mission had transformed both species, leaving a lasting legacy, that when the call for help comes, courage, empathy, and action can create miracles that echo across the cosmos.